Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. All this week, I have profiled individuals who participated at the Battle of Gettysburg or during its aftermath, soldiers, a nurse, a member of the Sanitary Commission, and I've read to you passages covering some pretty heavy duty stuff, the death, the destruction, the loss of tremendous numbers of soldiers, the pain and suffering on the community, mass casualty crisis, a humanitarian crisis in and about Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So I want to take a little bit of a lighter look in this episode connected to Gettysburg, and it involves the individual pictured here. His name is Lloyd Grayson Harris. He was an officer in Company C of the famed 6th Wisconsin Infantry, part of the Iron Brigade. He started the war in the regiment, but he was not a native of Wisconsin. In fact, he was from New York. As a teenager, he went to work for a company that still exists today called American Express. You may have heard of it. He started there as a kid, worked his way up, became a company agent, and was part of that westward expansion that Americans followed in the middle part of the 19th century. He went as far as Wisconsin, and he was there when the war began, enlists in the 6th, and works his way up to an officer. He distinguishes himself in various battles and operations, including Antietam. And by the time of Gettysburg, he is with the regiment, and they are marching through Maryland on the way to Pennsylvania, anticipating some activity, but not knowing what lay ahead of them. Along the way, there's a scene that he captures in a story that he wrote long after the war. And the name of the story is That Pretty Girl. I want to read it to you now to give you a little sense of the youth of these folks and the individuals they met along the way. Harris is 22, and he's about to meet a young lady, along with all the comrades in the regiment and the Iron Brigade. So here's the story. Going from Frederick to Gettysburg, quote, "How it cheered us to see signs of loyalty as we trudged along toward the Pennsylvania line. One incident stands bright in my memory of a beautiful girl, scarcely 20, who had ventured down to the gate in front of an elegant mansion and stood waving a large American flag. The 6th was on the lead. Gallant Dawes, that's Rufus Dawes, the commander of the 6th, and those with him raised their hats and politely bowed, but that seemed cold. Company B on the right, every last man seemed ready to give his life if necessary for that fair patriot, yet did not seem to know just what to do. Company F, with the gallant admirer of Schiller and Goethe, could only gaze at her with silent admiration. It was our turn next, Company C, to pass by. I felt something should be done to compliment the first time we had witnessed the American flag waved by such fair hands. So, without any authority from our good-natured lieutenant colonel, I gave the order, Company C, right shoulder, shift arms. They caught the idea. Every head was up, the fours perfectly aligned. Then, as we were just opposite the maiden, I commanded, carry arms. Down came every bright, shining musket. The next company did the same, and all the companies of the Iron Brigade as they passed gave her the salute as if she were the general of the army. It remains an unwritten history whether she fully realized the compliments. Yet, as a rich blush glowed over her face, she no doubt felt that in some way the veterans were saying their action, thank you, pretty miss, for your loyal efforts. That's a great story about an encounter going through Maryland on the way to the Pennsylvania line. This is late June, so there's a rest of the story that needs to be told not long after On July 1st, Harris, the 6th, and the rest of the Iron Brigade are marching, and they hear the sounds of cannon fire coming away at them, not too distant in the future. And what they think at first is somehow somebody's playing a trick. Maybe the people of Pennsylvania became confused and they thought July 4th was July 1st, and they were firing guns in celebration 3 days early. Of course, they were wrong. It was the Battle of Gettysburg that was in full swing. Harris, his regiment, the brigade, of course, on that first day of the battle, they are intense and part of the heavy fighting around the Confederate occupied railroad cut that paralleled the Chambersburg Pike, in a final charge that compelled the surrender of the hard-fighting 2nd Mississippi Infantry. A buckshot blast catches Harris in the neck. He's forced to fall back, goes into town, gets treated by a surgeon, and the surgeon is trying to stick the probe into him. There's definitely a lot of pain, a lot of blood. In the middle of all this, Harris pulls out a harmonica that he had bought in Frederick, and he begins to play a spirited song to take his mind off of the pain and liven up the moment just a little bit. Long story short, he survives the wounds. The battle, of course, is eventually won by the Union Army, and Harris stays in uniform through the rest of the war, goes on to join the Marines, which you can see he's dressed here in a Marine uniform. Look at the shoulder straps up top there. And eventually leaves the service and settles in St. Louis, where he works in manufacturing. He's also becomes very active in Veterans Affairs. He's a prolific writer, all kinds of stories, including That Pretty Girl. And he lives a long life until 1918. He dies at age 68. So there you have it, ending the week and the stories of Gettysburg on a bit of a lighter tone. We'll see you next time.